I love this. For Lucas, they're late must mean somebody getting traded. No, it just means I didn't have enough quiet in my apartment. Alex, here with Alex Donno on 305 guys. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. Not everything. It's funny. Ronster's upset that we were 1 minute late. Ronster, I'm sorry. I'll send you my schedule. Here we go. You ready? Let's go through it. We'll go through the book.
Well, and
I'll make
people
sure that I'm on your
remember, I
time.
mean, we're South Floridians. This is a network of South Floridians. I mean, if we're 2 minutes late, we're really 10 minutes early. I mean, the way Miami time goes.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, yeah, especially yes, I'm accustomed to being 4 hours late. Typically with some of the parties that I've attended through my life down here with certain folks. Anyway, we'll stay away from that. Let's get to the sponsors and then we'll get to what's going on here in the show. We're obviously going to talk Jimmy Butler today. 305 guys. For those of you who are joining for the first time, Alex and I go through South Florida sports more generally. Twice a week, typically sometime between 105 and 305. So that's what we're doing today. Sponsored here by our friends over at Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. Legal again in the state of Florida. You can now play up to 6 players again in the state of Florida. You can go to prizepicks.com, the Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. You want us to keep providing content? Help us out. Sign up for Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. VE. All right, everybody's asking about the Jimmy Butler meeting right now. I don't have anything on it to this point. I don't think anybody else does because otherwise you would see stuff start to leak. The way this thing tends to work is that when events actually occur, meetings actually occur, parties go quiet.
Right.
At least for a certain period of time, particularly if there's only a couple of people or fewer than a handful of people that are involved. And then the details tend to come out later. My guess is that if a leak comes here, it's probably more likely to come from Butler's camp than from the Heat
100%.
about this particular meeting. And you'll probably see a report from someone like Shams or someone along those lines, and then great denials that it came from Jimmy's side. But my guess is that somebody close to Jimmy will probably find out, and then you'll start to hear the details of this over the next a few hours after it happens. Of course, we're looking at a Friday in which the Heat, at least what they say, are fully prepared to bring Jimmy Butler back. That's going to be part of what this conversation is. They know at this point that they cannot suspend him any longer without pay, without the league's intervention. So just to explain, that we haven't even had the Players Association's grievance being heard. To my knowledge, as of 24 hours ago, it hadn't been officially filed yet. The Heat, of course, did speak to the league to kind of give their side. That's what you heard started to leak out. It wasn't necessarily from the Heat. It's from the documentation that the Heat sent in. But at this stage, again, they're waiting to see what Jimmy's reaction is to this. Now, it's been made clear, I think if you follow the reports, that people around Jimmy are making it clear that he's not going to change his mind. So
right.
We've seen that. He won't play with whatever he told Pat. He's going to tell Mickey. I don't think it's just going to be Mickey, by the way. Nick Harrison runs the team more day-to-day than Mickey Harrison does. I would anticipate that Nick will be there. I would anticipate that Bernie will be there. And I would anticipate that you could have others, maybe Andy Spo. I don't think it'll be a big group, but I think that there could be others that are involved in this. But Alex, that's basically where they're at. They have to see where Jimmy's head's at. What kind of a distraction is he planning to create here? Can they explain to him that it's in his best interest to play? It'll make it easier for them to trade him. Other teams want to see what he looks like on the floor. I know there's been a long sample size with Jimmy, but he's had some injuries this year. They want to. I think that if you want a team other than Phoenix to get involved, and I just did a podcast with Ty Windish, who covers the Bucks, and there is interest in Milwaukee, but so far, again, there's really nothing that I've heard that is going to entice the Heat to do anything at this stage. So this is about having a conversation with Jimmy. I believe, okay, let's at least try to get you back on the court. All right. We understand this is not forever. They're not offering him an extension. That's not going to happen. This is not going to end with an extension. Now, Jimmy says he doesn't want an extension. They were willing to discuss the extension after the season. That's not occurring right now. Let's have a conversation. Let's try to all get on the same page, at least for now. What's in everybody's interest? And then we can hopefully send you to where you want to go before the deadline. If it's not before the deadline, then okay. If you opt in after the season, then we'll have to figure something out. But I think that's where this is at right now. So I think it's really 50-50 that he plays on Friday. I wish I could be more definitive on this, but a lot it just goes into, again, how the conversation goes. Now, they have been clear with me up until about 24 hours ago that they would not send Jimmy home with pay. In other words, they would not pay Jimmy to stay home. I got a little budge on that in the last 24 hours. Now, I don't think they would send him home with pay for the whole season. I wouldn't be 1,000% stunned now if they sent him home for a short period of time while they're trying to work out a trade, and maybe something is brokered with his side, so that, again, you don't have to get the Players Association and the league involved. But there's a little bit of wiggle room there now, whereas I was told definitively we will not pay him not to play. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a short period of time that maybe that occurs.
All right, I got a question for you about from Jimmy's point of view, because I think I have a better idea of what the Heat really want and need to come out of this meeting. At least the understanding that, hey, we can all be professional and you can play hard to increase our leverage to trade you, and then your leverage to find a desirable destination. But well, what do you think Jimmy wants? Like, what do you think Jimmy wants to hear from Mickey? Like, what is he looking for?
I don't know what Jimmy wants at this stage, because there's been so many different reports about what he wants, and so many of them are contradictory. And I hate to upset those who are simply on Jimmy's side and nothing else at this point, but there hasn't been a whole lot of consistency. Now, not a lot of this has come out of his mouth. Let's be clear on this. Some of this are different reports. The only thing that's come out of his mouth is he's lost his joy. Okay, that's really it. The rest of this stuff has all been reports that he would go to 29 other teams anywhere but Miami, right? But then all of a sudden you start to hear the whispers he won't go to Memphis, or maybe not go to Milwaukee. But now that's been disputed by Sam Amick, who says that was never really communicated. Sam's a very good reporter. Okay, then there's the thing about Jimmy has always said that he wants, others to help carry the offense. He doesn't care about scoring. And then there were the reports that he was upset about the offensive changes and that it was basically affecting his money. So there's been all of these contrary reports. Okay, the only thing that's clear is he wants to get to Phoenix. It's pretty obvious at this stage. Okay, the Heat believe that Phoenix communicated to him way back, okay, maybe as early as December 7th, which is when the Suns were in town, okay, that they communicated to him that they would extend him. This stuff all kind of started. Someone's timeline started posting a bunch of Phoenix Suns stuff. The Heat are not stupid.
Which is it's technically tampering if we even care. Like, I know tampering happens everywhere, but that's tampering, right?
Technically, but I have been told that they will not file tampering charges.
Okay.
So, but again, I was also told that they would not send him home with pay. So these things are evolving. And then I was also told that they expected Jimmy to come back in great condition and raring to go, and everybody was on the same page. And you know why? They told me that because that's what the agent told them. And that's what Jimmy told his agent. So where does the communication break down here? Is it between Jimmy and the agent? Is it between the agent and the team? I mean, who has been not telling the truth? I'm just reporting what the team has been saying. Okay, I have talked to people on Jimmy's side. Absolutely. Trust me, they've reached out to me. They've tried to spin on certain things. There's certain things I've agreed with them about. There's certain things I agree with him about, but but the majority of this I don't, because the majority of this is Jimmy made a mess where he made a mess thinking he was in Minnesota, and this isn't Minnesota, it's Miami, and the Heat don't tolerate this kind of crap. And so that was basically it. Their mistake was giving him too much leeway, I think, and now trying to pull it back. And we talked about that in the last episode with Mike McDaniel. It's very difficult to do that. So that's kind of where it's at.
Well, and I know you heard, of course, the Dwayne Wade comments where like he mentioned that like players don't run that organization. That's Pat Riley runs that organization, strongly implying you can get away with stuff in a lot of places that you cannot get away with in Miami.
Yeah, Alex, to that point, right? Like there's a lot of people who are just anti front office at this point, and that's fine. If you want to make an argument that they didn't do enough to help Jimmy, I can work with that. Okay, we can go through it point by point. I'm probably not going to agree with you because I may give you facts of what actually happened, like for instance, like Cronin refusing to pick up the phone and other things that happened along the lines. Okay, things that I know. But here's the thing: there are some people that are so invested on social media and bashing the front office that they use Dwayne as their vessel to do it, and Dwayne basically just told all them to shut up. Like the people who are using Dwayne, it's the same thing they did to Dwayne. First thing, I know more about that circumstance than probably any reporter because I was dealing with Dwayne through it the entire time. Okay. If you remember, Le Batard was kind of giving the Heat side, and I was giving Dwayne's side, and we actually did radio shows on 790 between me and Le Batard so that we could try to broker a deal between us. Okay. So trust me, the organization did not view me as an ally at that point, but as we've gone forward, I've learned more about that situation, and I actually have come to believe that it's not just Dwayne and the organization, or the organization was at fault. There were other parties that played into that. Okay, which again, I don't want to get into here, but there was a lot more that went into that. But people are using the Dwayne thing as an example with the Jimmy thing, and Dwayne is basically telling you that he's not for what's going on right now. Now, he's not totally taking the organization's side against Jimmy, but he's basically saying this just shouldn't be happening right now. And he hinted at that when he talked about a house divided cannot stand and all the things that he said at a statue ceremony, which, by the way, Jimmy did not attend. Just like Jimmy did not attend his Hall of Fame, just like Jimmy did not attend the party at Riley's. Jimmy is just different in this regard. But to use Dwayne as the example is, I think now we see people are barking up the wrong tree with that, because Dwayne doesn't agree with you using him as the example in this situation. Let me get to some of the comments here, Alex, and I want you to get to them. I think this one's a good one. The game 1479. Dame cared about his Portland legacy. Jimmy does not. About obviously his Heat legacy. I don't think Jimmy cares if his number's retired. And I think this is kind of what you're working with, which is you're expecting someone to be triggered by certain barriers and guidelines. He just wants what he wants right now. He wants his money and he wants it in Phoenix. And that's pretty much where this is at. So anyway, we'll get to more of this on the other side of it. I do want to mention another great sponsor, 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. You get $20 to play right away at betteredge.com. This is a legal marketplace. Okay. Again, just you can play legally in the state of Florida. Now we know that, but you're also giving them money for free in the form of VIG. So check it out. It's betteredge.com. Use the code 5RSN, $20 to play right away. We also have contests we're going to be running over there as well. Chiefs, you can see there, 8.5-point favorites, but you can find others in the markets. Best game of the weekend looks like Ravens and Bills, pretty much a pick-em game. Yeah. Again, you can find other things in the market there as well. So use the code 5RSN. You get $20 to play. I'm looking at this Gary Young smear campaign. Pat was on hold with Cronin for 5 off seasons trade deadlines. Stop it. Again, the idea of smearing Jimmy, I don't understand why people think that benefits the Heat. Like, you're trying to get a return for him, Alex. Like, yeah. I don't get it.
If they were going to smear him, and I'm not saying they would do this, but if you were going to smear him, you would smear him after this is over. Like, that's when that would happen. Once you've washed your hands of the situation, you've traded him, or he signs elsewhere next summer, that's when you set your side of the story out there that may not make him look so good. But right now, if you make Jimmy look not so good intentionally, you're hurting yourselves because you're hurting his trade value.
Right, and he's hurt himself too, because they both hurt themselves by the way that this has been handled. It doesn't help them to have. They don't like operating in this space. They don't like. They are uncomfortable. They're comfortable being uncomfortable to a point. And then it became untenable. And you've heard some of the things that have started to come out. And then I know his side tried to clean that up with some of the stuff that went through Haynes. And it seemed like Haynes wasn't. I know Chris very well, and I've never seen him so unsure of a report. Like I worked around Chris for a year in Cleveland, but this seemed like something that somebody just gave to him. And it's like the facts didn't really even add up. The number of flights didn't add up right. I know it's been more than that for sure. I don't even know that just from the Heat. I just know that from personal experience of games that he flew in separately. They allowed him to stay at Airbnbs and separate hotels. Again, none of this matters. None of this matters if he plays and plays hard and plays well. They gave him all these concessions they didn't give others. And I think what you're hearing from Dwayne, and think about it, UD doesn't want to talk about it, right? Okay, because obviously he's put his foot in his mouth before. Okay, right? They got on him about the Hero 6 man.
He's smart not to talk about it now after the Hero stuff. Yeah,
he's staying out of it. Okay, yeah. Zoe is not going to speak on it because he works for the organization, but I can guess how Zoe feels about this, and I know Zoe has respect for. I've seen Zoe and Jimmy have very warm interactions, and I know that there's a competitor thing that links them. But knowing Zoe, he can't be down with what's going on right now. Okay, at all. He's a Pat guy. Timmy's not a Pat guy. Shaq is not a Pat guy. And Dwayne, at times, has not been a Pat guy. Okay, Dwayne, all right, we know this, right? All three of them have backed more of the organization than Jimmy. All three of them. Okay, Shaq, not to quite the same degree. Barkley did it more so on the show. Timmy went over. And Timmy was, and we talked about this, Timmy was the one who had the most battles with Pat. I covered those teams, okay? Timmy never agreed with anything Pat ever said. Trust me. If you wanted somebody to agree with Pat, you went to Zoe. Tim would be like, nah, it ain't like that. Okay, like that's what like I said 4 years of this, okay? So this idea again that everybody's water carrying for the organization. Tim Hardaway's water carrying for the organization. Shaq's water carrying for an organization where on the way out the door he said, you gave me Ricky Davis and Chris Quinn. That sounds like this report where apparently Jimmy was upset that they gave him Thomas Bryant and Josh Richardson. Like it seems like the same thing. And Dwayne, again, if anybody has any reason to say, I don't like the way the Heat conduct business with their stars, it would be Dwayne. It would be Dwayne. And that's not what you're getting. You're getting basically him saying he wishes the communication was better. So that's kind of where it's at. So this is one, Mr. M. The Heat have had some players leave with bad blood. They have, absolutely. Bosch left with bad blood too, but I don't know, that's a bad analogy. But he had obviously the health issues, okay, and he was upset at the Heat too for the way they handled it. And then he later said that he thought that they handled it correctly. They were trying to save him, okay, and there was liability issues, but yes, he could have potentially died on the court. The Heat have had some players live with bad blood, but Jimmy left all his teams with bad blood. And I think if you want to talk about where the hubris is here on the Heat's part, Alex, and I think this is something they need to address, is that they think they can fix things sometimes that other organizations could not because they're the Heat.
Yeah, and sometimes they can.
Right. I mean, this is an example. I mean, if you were them, if Jimmy came to you and you were, let me ask you this, okay? If you're in the Hassan Whiteside era, right? You made a series of mistakes, which they did. Overpaid Dion, overpaid James Johnson, right? After they had the 1-year contracts. That team was not going anywhere. Middling mess. There was no young talent like on this team. At least this team, there's some players that you can see are Ware, Jovic, and upside for it. On that team, there really wasn't. There was a lot of like sort of B- players on that team, right? That they were overpaying. And Jimmy comes in and basically saves them. Pat said he was a top 10 player when he acquired him. We were like, top 10? Really? Maybe 15, maybe 20, but he played like a top 10 player performer, okay, during his time with Miami. No question. He deserves credit for that. Yeah. Is it worth it to you to have relaxed the rules for him as much as they did? Because they did. Like they have for no other star. And that kind of feels like where some of Dwayne's resentment is like, well, I didn't get away with what Jimmy gets away with. Did they make a mistake relaxing the rules for him, or was it worth it because they needed him? They were desperate for him at that point.
Well, what was it? The old parable about what was it? The toad who gave the scorpion like the ride across the river, and then he ultimately stung him because that's my nature. I'm sure I butchered that parable, but it's something like Jimmy Butler's the scorpion, and the Heat, like, yeah, they relaxed things for him to make it work, but ultimately every exit with Jimmy, not just Miami. I mean, the Minnesota thing was super messy. This is. Unfortunately, there's always an expiration date on Butler's happiness in a certain place. And we probably tried to keep that going at least a year too long because at a certain point, things are always going to sour with him. So, maybe you could say you do regret it a little bit, Ethan, because, the last time, I mean, how many years are we removed from their last finals appearance? That was the peak a couple of years ago. 2 years removed from that was the peak. And last year obviously was a bitter descent, like the same way that final full year with Shaquille O'Neal, you went on the bitter descent before things got ugly. That's what this feels like. Things got ugly after a bitter descent.
I think that people are asking questions here. It's Jimmy's nature to bring distraction every team he plays with. This offseason, Pat failed the Heat, and it started with the Bam contract. I'll say this, Larry. I don't think it's a coincidence that there was a report released through Shams on draft night that Jimmy would not sign an extension under any circumstances, okay, which is not something I'd heard before. All right. I'd heard that it was likely to opt out. Now we're hearing he might opt in, but because it's more of a tactic at this point, a leverage tactic. But prior to that, okay, we hadn't heard this direct reporting out there. I mean, I'd heard it privately, but it came out on the same day Bam got an extension. And I just don't think that's an accident. I really don't. I think that there was simmering frustration here that built up. I do think that if we talk about the offense, okay, which, by the way, seems to have affected Bam more than it affected Jimmy. And by the way, they're a better offensive team this year than they've been playing through Tyler. Their offensive rating is better than it was last season. So some of that is because Jimmy's. I mean, some of this has been Jimmy played well at certain points of this too. I mean, he had the ridiculous game against Detroit. His efficiency was very good. So it's not like they made a terrible mistake like leaning into Tyler. And again, it hasn't benefited Bam, but it seems like the thing about the offense is more so that Jimmy felt before he didn't seem to care about his points, but then as he's not getting his money, he's correlating his stats with his money. I think that's where this thing kind of got a little bit sideways. And also, I do know, and this is on the Heat, if this is true, that Pat has not really engaged him in conversation. Like Pat, that I do know that they wanted to meet with Pat more often, and he didn't. And so if that's the case, then that's something that you can put on them. I mean, for sure. And people are talking about Philadelphia. Again, there was the podcast with JJ Redick. The end. Everybody knew that Jimmy did not like Coach Brown. What was it? I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind. The coach was Bruce Brown, not Bruce Brown's the player.
No, what was it?
Brett Brown. Brett Brown.
Yeah, Brett Brown.
Not Bruce Brown, not Bryce Brown. Yeah, Brett Brown.
He did the presser where he's like, he didn't play like Jimmy, he played like James, and then Jimmy was like, well, actually, my name is Jimmy.
Well, there was the whole thing with Brett Brown, that there was an issue there. I do know at the time that Elton Brand was in favor of retaining him, giving him the extra. This came down to contracts again. Was in favor of giving the extra year in his contract. Josh Harris at the time was not. Morey was not the general manager at that stage. It was Elton, and then Jimmy had big issues with Brett Brown, and he had issues with, funny enough, with Simmons, who now actually he shares an agent with Simmons at this stage, and has worked out with him since. But so there's been a whole bunch of everywhere that he's been. There was the issue with Towns in Minnesota. None of this is new. I guess the Heat's mistake here was thinking they would be different. The Heat's mistake was thinking they would be different. And if that's the case, they need to reevaluate, I think that hubris, because I think that has played into some things here. And some fans would say that it plays into when they make trade offers, that they have a limit. And when they make, I know he was upset that they didn't re-sign Gabe. They made a good decision not to re-sign Gabe ultimately, but they did make Gabe an offer, but they came in like $3 million under where the Lakers ended up coming in. Then they tried to make up for it at the end. And maybe, again, we can talk about them having this line for players that they won't cross as maybe something that they need to reevaluate. I'm open to all of those conversations. I'm not really open to the conversation about whether Jimmy quitting on his teammates and his team in the middle of the year is a good thing. I'm not. I can't. I just can't get with. So let me ask you this. Let's say he plays tomorrow. I don't know right now that he's going to. I don't know that they're going to decide that's the best thing for his teammates. I don't know if they're going to pull back a little bit on this idea that they won't pay him to go away, at least maybe for a week or two until the trade deadline. And then if they can't make a deal by then they try to bring him back again. That's another option here, I think, that could be considered. But let's say he plays tomorrow night. I don't know if he'll start. Okay. He hasn't played in a while. I don't know if they want to deal with that. But let's say that they bring him off the bench. Let's say Spo sends him to the scorer's table. What is the fans' reaction tomorrow? What do you think?
I think it's more than 50% booze. I think it's a. I don't think everybody boos him because not every Heat fan is about that petty life. But I think it's probably more booze than cheers. So, what do you think?
That would be my lean. The only thing I'll say about this is that I think we get caught in a bubble here a little bit. Because I'm doing 10 Heat podcasts a week and dealing with people on Twitter, on Discord, on YouTube, on Blue Sky, on Instagram. These are the people who are like live and die with this team, and we appreciate them because those who do with the Dolphins, with the Canes, with the Heat, that's what allows us to do what we do here. With that being said, I don't think 90% of the public is paying that close attention to this. And I just wonder if you're going to a game and you're bringing your kids to a game it's a Friday night, okay, or you're going to a game because it's where you go before you go out on South Beach or whatever, or Wynwood. I don't know. I don't know necessarily that there's going to be the antipathy towards Jimmy from them. So I don't think it's going to be mostly booze only for that reason. This was the same thing as when everybody like on social media wanted Hero traded the last 3 years, but then I'd go to the arena and everybody was wearing 14 jerseys. I think it's true. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I think it's a different subset of fan. I think the more casual, It's a night out. It's a Friday night game. It's a team that won the championship 2 years ago.
I agree to an extent. I feel like this is a little bit more. I think this is a little bit more mainstream than some of the Tyler Hero Twitter arguments. Not saying everybody, but it's why I say more than 50% booze. Not 100%, but more than 50%.
Well, let's see if they can get there on time too. Is there anything else going on in Miami that night? It's not Ultra yet, right? We're still a month away from that. So you can actually still get to the arena, or a month or 6 weeks away from that.
Ultra traffic is in. They should either move Ultra. Didn't they try to move Ultra? Have they ever moved Ultra?
They do that on purpose. Hour and 45 minutes it took me to get from the arena to the to 395 last time in Ultra, and I had basically two kids stoned out of their minds, like falling on my car. But yes, it's not Ultra yet. So, and it's 8:00 game, so most people have an opportunity to ride. But the seats will be half empty when Jimmy's introduced anyway. If he's introduced, unless Spo brings him in the second quarter. I mean, the craziest part of this is there could be trolling both ways here. I mean, he could bring him back and just put him on the bench.
Yeah.
They can put him back and just put him on the bench. Like, they can pay him to sit on the bench. I don't know that that's the best thing to do, but they could do that. And additionally, Jimmy has another way here, which is, I'll come back. I'll take your money. Call a play for me, and I'm going to walk to the corner again, and then force the Heat to prove that. So this is just a really ugly, complicated situation where it does seem like the Heat just kind of kept kicking it down the road, and Jimmy was like, "You're going to try to kick the can down the road? I'm going to kick it in your face." And that's kind of where we're at right now. So we'll see how that plays. Right, Andrew Lee says this is a classic episode of when getting petty goes wrong. Miami Heat 2025 champs. Miami gives them the best chance to win a ring this season. I don't think that Miami has any chance to win a ring this season, but I don't see any of the teams that we're talking about. I don't think Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix isn't even in the play-in right now. And you look at some of the other teams. Memphis would be the one to me that I think would.
He doesn't want to go there.
He doesn't want to go there. So I mean, he's not going to Cleveland. He's not going to Boston. I don't see him going Tibbs. They're so tight on their tax and their cap and all that stuff right now. I don't really see it in New York. So, I mean, if you're talking about Phoenix, I don't even know if they get out of the play-in. So that's kind of where it's at. Appreciate everybody joining. We'll have more shows as we go. We just want to kind of update you. Like I said, not a lot on the meeting at this point. But the one thing I have heard over the past 24 hours is a little bit more leeway as far as sending him home with pay. And it would surprise me from where the Heat were, because I was told there was no way that would happen. But again, these situations are fluid, and now it would not stun me if that's what ends up happening, if just for a week or two, if this thing is way too toxic. Marcus is asking if they practiced today. I do not believe they did. No, they come back for the road trip. They are scheduled for shoot around tomorrow morning. So that's what they would have. All right, Alex, appreciate it. Thanks to our sponsors, Prize Picks. Use the code 5, Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN.